fat. Do I need to lose weight first and only then start exercising? No, there is no reason to do such a thing. Combine toning with training. Otherwise, in the case of fat, you will not maintain muscle mass. Q. How long do I have to train until I have muscles? I will be strong, and I will be like a certain person. It is impossible to answer such a question. First of all, strength and size are individual things that vary from person to person according to their perception. The results of training depend on so many variables, such as genetics, training, nutrition, sleep, etc., that it is impossible to estimate them. One can achieve a certain result in a year, for example, while the other will reach a similar result only 2 years later. It should be noted that you will never look like someone else, because each of us has different genetics and therefore develops and grows differently. Concentrate on your training, nutrition, and recovery. Make sure you have read and understood everything on the subject. And when you know what you are doing, invest in yourself. This way, you will produce the best and achieve maximum results. Q. I've been training for over a year at the gym. What training programs are there for advanced trainers like me? You are not an advanced exerciser. The level of the trainee is determined by the recovery time and not by seniority in training or working weights. As long as you haven't exhausted or finished training programs that progress from workout to workout. Q. What are the basic exercises? The basic exercises are the squat, bench press, and deadlift. Q. What is a squat? How do you perform a squat correctly? The squat, the king of exercises, is a basic movement or exercise that mainly involves the muscles of the lower body, and it includes bending the knee and sitting down. There are many variations to the exercise, the most common of which is the low bar squat. Later, there will be a detailed guide. Q. What is a deadlift? How do you perform a deadlift correctly? A. A deadlift is an exercise that involves many muscles, especially the muscles of the legs and back, in which you pull as heavy a weight as possible from the floor until you stand with your knees and back locked. There will be a detailed guide later. Q. Which exercise should be the heaviest? Which is the easiest? A. The more muscle groups, especially large ones, you engage, the more weight you will lift, and the faster you will progress. The heaviest exercise is the deadlift, followed by the squat, bench press, power clean, and overhead press. Q. If I want to lose weight, should I avoid eating fat? A. No, fat does not make you fat and plays an important part, among other things, in recovery from training and hormones. In order to lose weight, you need to build an orderly diet with a negative calorie balance. Q. I exercise every day and eat little. Why am I not losing weight? Your diet and training are too extreme. Diet and exercise are stress factors. When both the diet and the training are extreme, the stress level increases. As a result of the stress, hormones, cortisol, are released that cause metabolic problems, fluid accumulation, and the maintenance of fat reserves. In order to progress in toning, a suitable caloric deficit must be adjusted. Q. What is protein powder? Does it inflate? Will it make me bigger and stronger? A. Protein powder is a certain amount or proportion of protein and nothing else. The purpose of protein powder is to help people who are unable to reach their protein values reach them, provided they eat properly, by providing them with a high-quality, light, and low-calorie portion of protein. It should be noted that protein powder is only a nutritional supplement, not a nutritional substitute, so it is definitely not a substitute for regular food. As we mentioned above, the protein powder is actually just a portion of protein, so in itself it does not have any special effect on the body. It is not a magic powder and will not by itself cause growth, bloating, or strengthening the body. And it is only intended to supplement the protein values that we are unable to supplement. From normal food, you can even say like a cottage cup. Wait, so why not just eat a cup of cottage cheese instead of protein powder? True, protein powder, as we said, is not a substitute for food, so our first priority will be food consumption and only then food supplements if necessary. People who understand and know what they are doing tend to take protein powder due to its good taste, the variety of the menu, the low caloric values, mostly, the ease of consumption, and also due to its low price compared to normal food. For example, people in a toning period who have a certain caloric allowance will often prefer the protein powder that will help them complete the desired values and also maintain the limited caloric value they consume, for people who fail to meet both the limited caloric requirement and the high protein requirement. Q. Is it true that protein powder shrinks the penis? A. No, as mentioned, there are no dangerous substances in the protein powder or anything different from the normal food you eat. Let's move on to the explanation of the exercises you received. Meet the squat. The squat should be the foundational exercise in any weightlifting program. If the goal is strength, hypertrophy, increasing muscle volume, or increasing the ability to accelerate or jump high, the squat is the tool for the goal. In addition to the work of the muscles of the legs, hips, lower back, and abdominal muscles, the demand of the body from the squat exercise causes stimulation of the growth system and thus helps to achieve strength and size in all its parts. The basic technique of the squat requires placing a bar loaded with weight along the shoulders, then bending the hips and knees while descending into a low squat position and returning to the standing position. Let's examine the squat in more depth. Standing. The standing position varies from one person to another, but one thing is important for all those who want to see progress. The feet should be fully on the floor. The center of gravity can be kept in the center of the foot, but it is better to concentrate it towards the heels. In order to achieve this, some people may need to lift their toes slightly when squatting, thus placing most of the weight on the heels or center of the foot, creating an involuntary flat-footed situation. Feet should be at least shoulder width apart. A narrower stance will cause the quadriceps to withstand more load and cause the bar to travel a greater distance. A wide stance, sometimes called a sumo squat, is preferred by powerlifters, although some have success with a narrower stance. The sumo position puts more strain on the hamstrings and hip joints. In general, people with longer legs will need a wider stance than those with shorter legs. There are exceptions. A wide stance will result in more activation of the hip adductors and hip extensors than a narrow stance. The calves should be as vertical as possible during the movement. This reduces the opening of the knee joint and the shear loads. By reducing the workload on the knee joint, more work will be done on the large muscles of the hip joint. For powerlifters, it even shortens the movement distance with the bar since the knee moves forward, so the hips have to drop lower to reach a parallel position. There are many approaches to squat depth. There are those who believe that a low drop when performing the squat beyond the parallel is dangerous for the knees. None of this is close to the truth. Stopping in a parallel or higher position will cause a direct load on the knees, while a deep squat will transfer the load to the hips. The thigh muscles are able to carry a higher load than the knees. Studies have shown that squats create fewer compression loads in the knee joint than leg presses and knee lunges. For functional strength, we want to get as low as possible and under control. The lower we go, the more ampullae are involved in the movement. Squats and knee injuries. When talking about leg toning exercises, injuries are part of the equation. Knee injuries are one of the most common claims that come from squats, but if so, those who do not know how to perform the exercise will usually report them. Correctly performing a squat will cause a correct load on the knee joint, which improves the harmony in raising the loads on the knee joint by having more stability for the joint, thus protecting the knee from shear loads. Exercises for toning the legs as part of a long-term training program like the squat will lead to changes in collagen and hypertrophy of the ligaments. At least one study has shown that weightlifters and powerlifters experience fewer symptoms of arthritis. Other critics of the squat say that the squat causes a decrease in knee stability, which is also far from the truth. Studies have shown that the squat increases knee stability by reducing joint laxity. The squat is, in fact, used as an exercise for rehabilitation in many cases of knee injuries, including injuries to the anterior cruciate ligament. One of the most maligned factors in the squat is the position of the spine. It is very important not to turn your back. This can cause problems in the lower back and the upper back as well. The back should be arched and the erector spinae muscles contracted in order to prevent injury. This position should be maintained throughout the movement, as rounding your back on the way up is more common than rounding your back on the way down, and people who make this mistake perpetuate the myth that squats are bad for your back. Beyond that, correct posture of the back is important in order to create an integrated center of gravity. The more one leans forward, or even worse, rounds their back, the more load the torso erectors will have to bear, and the abdominal muscles will be able to contribute less to the movement. Beyond that, the greater the tilt, the greater the shear load on the vertebrae. Correct posture of the spine will help ensure that the load placed on it is compressive, as it should naturally withstand. Another reason to squat below parallel is that the scrum, the large part at the end of the spine, reaches a better position, and thus, in fact, causes maximum mobilization of the muscles for the lifting. I strongly recommend you to watch professional lifters. How do they squatting correctly so you prevent yourself from unnecessary injuries? The deadlift. The deadlift is a heavy and complex movement that should be included in every weightlifter's training program. This lift will not only improve the strength of the whole back, but also the thigh, abdominal, and leg muscles, as well as give strong grip work, which is an important skill in this lift. Like the squat, the deadlift will stimulate the growth system in the body, which will give strength and mass to other areas. There are two basic styles of deadlifting, classic and sumo. Each style is explained, and we compare them. While some of the components of the deadlift are the same, such as the fact that the exerciser lifts the weight off the floor and reaches a straight upright position without bending his arms, there are many biomechanical differences that occur when using the different styles. The classic stance forces the exerciser to stand on the floor with his feet slightly narrower than shoulder width apart. In order to position your feet properly, you must slide them forward as much as possible without moving your shoulders past the front of the bar. The hips should be as close to the bar as possible, but the lower back must remain arched. The head should be raised so that the trainee looks straight and slightly up. The shoulders should be back but slightly rounded. Bringing the shoulders closer causes the shoulder girdle to contribute, thereby extending the distance of the bar pull. The trainee must hold the bar with a strong grip and pay attention so that the bar does not roll. A combined grip, one hand in pronation and another hand in supination, is usually used in this lift. The real beginning of the deadlift is the preparation, or the first stage, as it is known in Olympic lifts, and we described it above. The next step, before pulling the bar off the floor, is to fill the abdominal cavity with air. While inhaling as much air as possible, the goal is to push the air down into the abdomen and not into the chest cavity. Inhaling air into the chest cavity will cause the shoulders to lift, which will increase the distance the exerciser must lift the bar. The deadlift begins with a combined hip and knee extension movement. The knee will lengthen due to the contraction of the quadriceps muscle, and during the lunge, it will move slightly backward. The thigh will lengthen by contracting the gluteus maximus and hamstrings. The bar should be lifted into the body and up. This way, the exerciser will be able to keep himself from falling forward while lifting, which gives much more stability to the center of gravity. Here, the position of the feet is an important factor. If they are too far forward, causing the shins to be closer to the bar than necessary, the bar will need to be raised around the knees instead of directly over them. This shortens the lever arm distance and reduces the twisting torque resistance. At this time, and true to the entire lift, the upper back and shoulder muscles, the trapezius, latissimus dorsi, shoulders and shoulder stabilizer muscles, will be under isometric contraction in order to keep the bar firmly in place. In the arms, the elbow flexors will also be isometrically, statically, contracted in order to stabilize the elbow joint. The forearm flexors, on the other hand, will be very active in holding the bar. The extensors of the torso and the stabilizing muscles of the spine will also contract in order to maintain the correct anatomical position of the spine, even when the back is tilted. These muscles will be more active when the back is tilted and not upright. In the classic deadlift, the upper body is more inclined than in the sumo deadlift, so the sumo deadlift reduces the shear loads from the lower back. As the bar passes over the knees and into the hip, several points should be made. It is important to keep the knees from bending again once they have begun to straighten. This will create a load that will be placed on the tendons and ligaments of the knees. Another common mistake a trainee will make is that when he is near the end of the lift, he will try to pull his upper body back while it is easier to push the hips forward. This technique will allow the exerciser to transfer part of the load on the torso erectors to the large muscles of the thigh. Also, there is no need to do shrugs at the end of the movement, and the shoulders should be kept low and in their natural position. The biggest change that occurs in the sumo deadlift is the placement of the feet. They are placed much wider, and sometimes lifters can even double the width of the shoulders, but if so, it is quite extreme. The toes turn outward, sometimes until the angle of the foot reaches 160 degrees. There are several biomechanical advantages to this stance. The distance the bar has to move is much shorter due to the fact that the hip joint is on average 12 degrees more than in a classic deadlift, while the knee angle is 13 degrees more or less. The upper body is much closer to upright, allowing for a safer start. The sumo stance reduces torque and shear loads from the L4 and L5 vertebrae. In addition, the sumo stance allows the trainee to place the bar closer to the body, which shortens the range of motion of the lower back. This stance can shorten the distance the bar moves by up to 25–40%. The functional technique of the deadlift is also different. The classical deadlifter will have to pull down from the feet, while in the sumo deadlift, the knees should be pushed out towards the toes. This is very important in order to avoid external shear loads on the knee, what with the fact that it will give the bar lifter the opportunity to use the large muscles of the thigh in the early phase of the lift, compared to the classic deadlift. While the bar is closer to the exerciser, this will result in an earlier connection to the legs. When the bar rises up the thigh, it is important to keep the fingers, especially in the pronation grip, from opening due to the friction created. Talc or magnesium can prevent this friction if sprinkled on the feet. An important thing that hasn't been talked about so far, which sets the deadlift apart from the other three lifts in powerlifting, is that, unlike the squat and bench press, the deadlift does not have an eccentric contraction, the lengthening of the muscle while it is contracting. In doing so, it gives the ability to negate the use of the stretch reflex that is used by many. There is a way to create a small stretch reflex which can help at the beginning of the lift, but it does not have the same effect as the other lifts in powerlifting. In the classic deadlift, the hip swing that will cause the knees to bend as well can be used. The lift should be done when the thigh is at its lowest point, and the movement should be continuous. You have to be careful when doing this, because if the hip lowers too much, the lifter will be in a biomechanical deficit. Not surprisingly, there is a difference in technique when performing a sumo deadlift. This technique, often called a dive, can make the sumo deadlift perform a greater stretch without changing its position, unlike the classic deadlift. Because the feet are farther apart, you can gradually lower your hips and then burst up from the bottom of the descent, unlike the classic deadlift, which moves up and down. Not only does this allow for a greater stretch reflex, but it also allows for a more upright back than the sumo deadlift from a static standing position. Deadlift training. There are many methods for training and improving the deadlift. Some of them are listed here. Periodization is a simple and effective method to reduce volume while increasing weight. The process lasts for weeks or months. This is a very common method, and there is a lot of information to be found about it. The fusion method is this method of training the muscular system of lifting without causing overtraining of the central nervous system with respect to one single lift. The deadlift is not performed heavily throughout the cycle and, in several cycles, is rarely performed. This method was first used by the successful Olympic weightlifters of the Soviet Dynamo Club. It was later practiced by the original West Side Barbell Club in the 1960s and 1970s, as well as some East Coast weightlifters such as Bill Starr, a former Olympic weightlifter turned coach. This is currently the method carried out by the new West Side Barbell Club from Ohio, under coach Lewis Simmons, the most successful powerlifting coach. This method will include heavy auxiliary work for the lifting itself, such as half deadlifts, good mornings, etc. An interesting variation of the deadlift workout used by Don Reinhold, the first man to squat 900 pounds in competition and the first to deadlift over 800 pounds. He would start in the cage with the racks, allowing the weight to be 8 inches, about 20 centimeters, above the floor. And each week he would lower the racks 1 inch until, 1 week before the peak, the weight was 1 inch above the floor. Maintain the lower back while maintaining correct technique. A final word on some myths. A number of experts warn against the deadlift, incorrectly saying it is dangerous to perform. This is true if the warnings written above are not applied. While there is a place for lifting with a round back in a program for high-level exercises, it is a mistake for most people, and there is no need to expand on the subject. Another thing that can be heard a lot is the use of a belt when doing deadlifts. The belt can help increase intra-abdominal pressure as well as the force that can be generated when deadlifting. If so, for most of the trainees who perform deadlifts, it is better to do the lifting without a belt and use the core muscles to stabilize the spine. Bench press. Highlights for the chest press in the gym. When we think of the more common exercises among gym goers, the chest press is without a doubt the most common exercise. The chest press is one of the most dominant and important exercises for the upper body. Excellent results can be achieved in terms of strength and aesthetics as long as the technique is correct, but a large number of mistakes made in the process to achieve these goals delay the process at best and may cause unnecessary injuries at worst. Although the exercise is mainly intended for the pectoralis major muscle, the joint that is under stress is the shoulder joint, which is a problematic joint because of the great freedom of movement it allows, hence the importance of following the execution instructions. In addition, it must be remembered that this is an exercise in which the weight is above the chest and not far from the neck, which naturally increases the dangers associated with incorrect work. As with any complex exercise, the setup is a central and essential element for doing the exercise in the best way, and naturally, we will also start the explanation from this point. Entering the set and the correct technique. Under the bar, when lying on the bench, make sure that the buttocks, upper back and head are placed in a good and stable way. The eye line should be right under the bar, and you have to make sure that the neck is positioned neutrally in order to avoid unnecessary injury. Leg position. There are several accepted methods for proper foot placement, but in all of them, the feet must be firmly planted on the floor. And when I say floor, I mean exactly that, meaning not in the air and certainly not on the bench. The width and position of the legs will be different for different people, depending on their anatomy. In the leg drive technique, we use our legs to create an angle that will help us stabilize the body in a better way and slightly shorten the range of motion in order to lift more weight. To achieve a successful leg drive, one must dig with the legs as much as possible until an appropriate contraction is reached, meaning that the legs must be fully on the ground, and then one must try to push the floor at the same time as pressing. The back is arched, but the buttocks must be kept close to the sofa and in no way raised during the entire movement. The position of the hands and the bar. Just as it was true for the feet, here too, the specific anatomy of each and every one dictates the correct grip. The position of the grip on the bar is a little beyond the width of the shoulders, and in order to best measure the width suitable for your body structure, stand upright, Reach your hands in front until they are parallel to the floor and to each other and pull your shoulder blades back. As you will argue, this pull slightly widens the gap in the hands, and the width you get is the ideal width for you. Remember it, since a grip that is too wide can cause heavier loads on the shoulders. When we choose a grip that suits us and hold the bar, we must make sure that the wrist joint is in a neutral position and not in a position of backward tilt, hyperextension. That is, the palm is a straight continuation of the forearm. This is because a state of hyperextension puts a lot of pressure on the wrist. Also, note the thumb lock. It's strange that it even needs to be mentioned, but apart from the safety aspect, holding the bar without the thumb closing the loop of the fingers impairs the possibility of keeping the palm at the right angle. On the right is the correct term, and on the left is the wrong term. Body contraction. This is one of the more important steps in the process, as it can determine the success or failure of the exercise. The purpose of contracting the body and preparing to press in the right way is to prevent injury, stabilize the shoulders, and increase the benefit from the exercise. Here are the steps. Pull your shoulders back. This can be done before holding the bar. After holding the bar tightly, pull your hands to the sides as if you're trying to tear the bar along. This action will activate the latissimus dorsi and other back muscles. Contract the gluteus and quadriceps muscles. Remember that this is a complex exercise that works on the whole body, and this is the same leg drive we talked about earlier. Removing the weight from the rack. It is always better to have the help of someone in order to maintain the contraction as well as possible, but sometimes this is not possible, and we are required to remove the rod from the rack ourselves without assistance. The natural movement to remove the barbell from the rack is to press up until the elbows are locked to disconnect the bar from the pin on which it rests. Then pull forward until the barbell is positioned above the chest. This is not the recommended way. In order to maintain the maximum contraction, it is better to pull the bar forward from the rack with the minimum pressure that allows this, because if you press the bar to bring it forward, the shoulders will almost always try to come forward naturally, which makes it difficult to maintain the maximum contraction. This way, you can keep your shoulders pulled back and your shoulder blades contracted throughout the exercise. Ready to press correct breathing. In order to maintain stability throughout the pressing, it is important to use the breath to our advantage. Before we lower the bar, we must take a long breath and hold it while creating pressure in the chest, Valsalva maneuver. The easiest way to understand this, although not necessarily the most pleasant way, is to simulate the action you do in the bathroom, especially when you are constipated. Holding the air in the lungs will help us stabilize the chest and spine until the bar reaches the chest. Remember that the spine is concave and does not lie all the way on the bench. There are several options regarding exhalation. When you reach the end of the repetition, that is, when the bar is firmly up, the arms are straight, and the elbows are locked. After the exhalation, we will immediately take another long inhalation before lowering the bar. Air can also be released slowly through pursed lips while pressing. In this case, it should be noted that the pressure in the chest will be maintained throughout the movement. As I explained earlier, this pressure is essential for stabilizing the spine. More advanced exercises can hold the air for a number of repetitions, but for beginners, this is not a recommended technique. Remember, breathing is always done at the end of the press and never at the bottom. Elbows at right angles. The elbows should come out at a 45-degree angle. If we allow the elbows to escape out to a 90-degree angle, we risk injuring the shoulders. In order to maintain an angle of 45 degrees, the latissimus dorsi muscles must be kept tight by contracting under the armpit. Eye focus while clicking. Keep your eyes focused on one point on the ceiling, just above where the pressing is done. Basically, you can look at the point to which we want to press the rod. Focusing will help us stay focused and constricted, because if we look at a rising rod, we may lose our stability, because it is a moving object. Integrating the chest press into the program and working correctly. Do not perform a high-intensity chest press on the same day as a high-intensity overhead press. True, the shoulder press works mainly on the shoulders and the chest press mainly on the chest. But in the chest press, there is a combination of several auxiliary muscles, such as the shoulders and the backhand, and in the shoulder press, the chest muscles are also activated. Therefore, in order not to exhaust the muscle and prevent unnecessary injury and halting progress, the two should not be combined at high intensity in the same workout. On the day you work hard on the chest press, you should work with a higher volume and a lower weight on the shoulder press, and vice versa. The chest press is the main exercise for the chest since it works on all the muscle fibers. A common mistake is to think that a positive incline chest press works the upper fibers that are not stimulated by a normal press. If you want, you can combine pressing on an upper slope as a rotation for a normal press or as a replacement for a shoulder press, but not as a full and permanent replacement. The chest is a muscle that responds well to high volume, but this does not mean that you should work more than 6-9 sets in training and more than 12-16 sets per week. As in most strength programs, the recommendation here is not to combine auxiliary exercises, but for those who nevertheless decide to add, good auxiliary exercises that can promote your chest press will be equivalent to a wide grip. If the bodyweight exercise is too easy for you, you can add weight and a narrow grip press. A common mistake is to release the air from the lungs while pressing. Although it is possible to learn a technique that allows a slow and controlled release of the air without losing intra-abdominal pressure, we recommend keeping the air fully released until almost the end of the press. Take a full inhalation and concentrate it in your stomach. The inhalation should be strong and powerful, as if you were trying to inflate a motorcycle tire. The air inside will provide you with the power needed for the initial burst, and losing the air will cause you to lose a lot of the potential for that level. Therefore, keep the air in your stomach until the end of the ascent. Remember, to be good at something, you have to practice it over and over again. We talked about this at the beginning of the course. Back extension. The lying back extension exercise is an exercise that strengthens lower back muscles and can help reduce lower back pain. It can be performed anywhere without special equipment and is beneficial for both strength and flexibility. To perform the exercise, place your hands by the sides of your head, elbows out to the sides, or your arms behind you, resting on your back. Slowly raise your hands, head, shoulders, and upper chest from the floor without jerking your torso. Pull your abs in to create a small space between your stomach and the floor. Pause for a count of 2 at the top of the movement, then lower slowly to the floor. Keep your head facing downward toward the floor in line with your spine. Keep your legs relaxed on the floor and raise yourself as far as is comfortable. For additional lower back stimulation and lower body involvement, raise your legs off the floor simultaneously with your chest and arms. Hold this final position for 1 to 5 seconds, keeping your head and neck at the same height as your shoulders throughout the movement. This exercise is known as prone supermans. Curl-ups, trank flexion, are a common exercise that work the rectus abdominis, the external oblique, the internal oblique, and the transverse abdominis. At a 30-degree eccentric curl-up angle, which is reached by lifting only the shoulders off the floor, the abdominal muscles work the most. As the angle of the curl-up goes up, the activity goes down because the body resistance torque goes down. The transverse abdominis muscle acts like a corset and helps control the lumbar spine between the segments rather than bending the trunk. Start the curl-up by lying on your back with your knees bent and your feet flat on the floor. Adjust the pelvis so that the lumbar spine is in a neutral position. Curl your head up and bring your chin to your chest. This will fix the position of your neck. Put your hands behind your ears and turn your elbows out to the side. Focus on your abs and curl your upper back off the floor as your abs pull you up. Keep your arms, shoulders, neck, and legs relaxed. Do the exercise at the right speed so that the abdominal muscles work as much as possible and you have good motor control. For active people, 1 repetition per second is the fastest cadence. For less active people, however, a slower speed is recommended to lower the risk of injury and improve motor control. The bicycle crunch and the cross crunch are 2 variations. Don't do more than 60 curl-ups, so you don't put too much stress on the spinal tissues. For people who have never worked out before, start with 2 sets of 15 reps and build up from there. Between dynamic spinal flexion exercises, you should rest for at least 48 to 72 hours to give the spinal tissue, muscles, and intervertebral discs time to change. To avoid getting hurt, you shouldn't do spinal flexion exercises in the first hour after waking up. The machine-assisted chest dip is a great exercise for beginners who struggle with chest dips. It targets the lower pectoralis major muscle and works synergists such as anterior deltoid, triceps brachii, upper pectoralis major, pectoralis minor, rhomboids, levator scapulae, latissimus dorsi, and teres major. The exercise involves setting the pin to a desired weight and using the assisted dip machine with an oblique grip. The exercise involves inhaling as you bend your arms to lower your body until you feel a mild stretch in your chest or shoulders. As you descend, allow your elbows to flare out slightly. Exhale as you push your body back up to the starting position. Repeat for the prescribed number of repetitions. To effectively target the lower pectoralis major, lean your torso forward and flare your elbows out. Keep your core and gluteal muscles engaged throughout the exercise. The machine assists you by providing a counterweight, so choose a weight that is heavy enough to assist, but not so heavy that it keeps your pectoralis major from being challenged. Some models may require you to stand on a platform instead of kneeling on a pad, but the form remains the same. Lean forward and flare your elbows out. This ensures that you target your chest and not your triceps. Seated incline dumbbell curls are an exercise that targets the biceps and forearms, allowing for a greater range of motion and increased activation of the biceps. This exercise is commonly performed as part of a strength training program and is often used to develop arm strength, improve muscle definition, and increase overall upper body aesthetics. To perform this exercise, follow these tips. 1. Set up the bench at an 80-degree angle, with your back straight and feet flat on the floor. 2. Choose the right weight for your fitness level and goals. 3. Hold a dumbbell in each hand with your palms facing upward. 4. Position your arms fully extended and parallel to the floor, keeping your elbows close to your body. 5. Curl the dumbbells slowly, keeping your elbows stationary. 6. Breathe properly, inhaling as you lower the dumbbells and exhaling as you lift them. 7. Control the movement, avoiding swinging or jerking motions. 8. Benefits of seated incline. Dumbbell curls include targeted muscle activation, increased muscle activation, reduced strain on the wrists, and improved range of motion. Seated incline dumbbell curls are a highly effective exercise for building strength in the biceps and forearms. By incorporating this exercise into your workout routine, you can achieve better muscle activation, reduce strain on the wrists, improved range of motion, and overall increase strength and size in your arms. The dumbbell military press is an overhead exercise that targets the arms, shoulders, chest, and core muscles. It is important to understand the correct technique and maintain proper form to prevent injury. Dumbbells offer more range of motion than barbells and can be easier on joints. To perform a seated dumbbell military press, grab 2 dumbbells and sit on an incline bench with an 80-degree angle. Rest 1 dumbbell on each thigh, keeping your shoulders and back straight. Raise the dumbbells from your thighs and bring them to shoulder height. If you have heavy dumbbells, raise your thighs one at a time to help lift the dumbbells. Rotate your palms so they face forward or face your body perpendicular to the ground. Press the dumbbells above your head until your arms fully extend. Hold the weight for a moment and lower the dumbbells back to shoulder height. Complete the desired number of reps, starting with 1 set of 8, 10 reps for beginners. This exercise can help improve overall strength and flexibility in weightlifting. To perform machine-assisted pull-ups, add weight to the machine and experiment with different weights until you find a challenging level. Start with more weight than you think you need, and gradually increase the weight until you find a level that's challenging without being too much. Generally, you should be able to do several reps with the weight, but no more. Start from a standing or kneeling position on the platform, ensuring you're comfortable and well-balanced. Adjust the platform appropriately for your height and ensure your arms are straight when reaching up to grab the handles. Use an overhand grip on the handles, as they are approximately the same width apart as your hands should be when using a pull-up bar. Keep your arms straight and avoid hyperextend your elbows to avoid injury. Pull yourself up between the handles using a similar form to a regular pull-up bar. The weight kicks in to assist you as you complete the motion. Keep your chin above the top of the handles and use a pumping motion, driving your elbows towards your side. Don't strain or pull with your neck, and keep your shoulders down. Keep your hips and torso as still and straight as possible without swinging or pumping from your hips. Lower yourself slowly and controlled, focusing on taking between 2 and 4 seconds to lower your body back to your starting position. Pause for a couple of seconds before doing your next pull-up. Complete 10 to 15 reps per set, as machine-assisted pull-ups won't help you progress towards unassisted pull-ups unless you take responsibility for the work and do multiple reps to build strength in your muscles. However, take advantage of the assistance provided by the machine to do multiple reps that you might not be able to do with band-assisted pull-ups or unassisted pull-ups. The back extension exercise is a classic exercise that strengthens the lower back, glutes, and hamstrings. It involves lifting the upper body up to form a straight line and lowering it back down to the starting position. The exercise offers numerous benefits, including strengthening the erector spinae, improving spinal flexibility and control, and allowing for spinal movement in the back extension. The back extension exercise can be performed on the floor or on a bench, and it involves lifting the upper body up to form a straight line and lowering it back down to the starting position again. It offers numerous benefits for those looking to improve their strength and overall fitness, particularly regarding spinal flexibility, posture, and lower body function. The back extension works the erector spinae, which run along the spine and help maintain an upright posture. Engaging these muscles helps maintain a comfortable posture and reduce the risk of back pain and injury. By engaging spinal muscles and lifting the upper body, the exercise can stretch and strengthen the muscles along your spine, which can improve overall spinal mobility.